Welcome to DairyPod, a podcast series from Dairy Australia. Featuring a range of experts, each episode offers insights into Australia's unique dairy farming conditions, as well as personal experiences and the latest in dairy innovation. Welcome to DairyPod. My name is Kristen Davis. I'm a Development and Regional Adaptation Lead at Dairy Australia. And I'm speaking with Zoe Vogels, who is the National Milk Quality and Biosecurity Lead for Dairy Australia. Today we're going to be discussing the importance of milk quality and the Dairy Australia Milk Quality Awards. But first, to get us started, Zoe, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in dairy?
Thanks, Kristen. So I'm a dairy veterinarian by trade. I started in clinical practice about 25 years ago down in Timboon in southwest Victoria. And then I married a dairy farmer, so I never left. So we have a family dairy farm that milks about 700 cows in Scotts Creek. And then 2.5 years ago, I left clinical practice and joined Dairy Australia in the tech lead role. And literally the first project that I was given was to organise that year's Milk Quality Awards.
Thanks, Zoe. And I think throughout our discussions today, we'll kind of move into, your experiences both as a dairy vet, but then also your time at Dairy Australia and some of those experiences and how they sort of lean into milk quality and the Milk Quality Awards. So I see your passion for milk quality and calves shine when I work with you in our everyday work. Can you tell us a little bit about what gets you really excited about milk quality?
Well, I have to say, I do really love drinking milk and eating cheese and ice cream. So that's a bias that I've kind of inherently have. But I guess from, in terms of what I see on farm, high rates of mastitis or poor milk quality is something that farms find really, really frustrating, and they really want to do something about. And then conversely, I see how much pride farmers get in having good milk quality and how much it means to them to have good quality and how much it's a team effort on farm. So, yes, I guess I like it because it tastes great, and I like it because it impacts farmers. Well, it impacts their profitability, but also like their state of mind and frustrations on farm.
Yeah, that's really great, Zoe. And I think the Dairy Australia Milk Quality Awards really help to highlight the importance of milk quality, but also the efforts that really go into making a really good quality product. So during your time at DA, you mentioned that one of your first projects that you got to work on was the Dairy Australia Milk Quality Awards, and you've been heavily involved in pulling them together ever since. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Dairy Australia Milk Quality Awards and how they are judged?
So there's a bit of a process. So it's judged on an annual average bulk milk cell count. So that's basically if you got all of the VATs for the whole year, so every pickup, and then you work out the average bulk milk cell count, so how many white blood cells are in milk. It gets judged on that, and then the farms with the lowest 100 bulk milk cell counts, they get the gold diamond, and then the rest of the farms that are in the top 5%, they get a silver diamond. And in terms of how we actually get the data, we ask processors to submit the data, and so they do that, and then we send it to an external consultant who analyzes it. So it's about, I think it's over 1 million lines of data that kind of get put together. We do some data checks. So, we make sure that we're not missing any farms that should be there or that we're expecting to be there, making sure that all the results make sense. And then there's kind of like making sure. So this is, I guess, when I started, the thing that I was most conscious of is, and this is probably stems from my time as a vet, is how important it is to get farms' names right when you're writing about them, especially when they're in print, in the weekly times. So, after we've got all the results, it's, making sure we get the right names, making sure it's spelt right, making sure it's going to be, as near perfect as possible when it goes out on the Wednesday that we announce them.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Zoe. And obviously we've got this annual award that's completely dedicated to levels of bulk milk cell count. Can you tell us why BMCC is so important?
Well, I guess there's two things. From a farmer's perspective, they get paid based on their bulk milk cell count. So, in Australia, the premium cutoff is 250,000. So if you get less than this, you get paid the premium amount, and above that you get deductions. But then also from a processor's point of view, better quality milk means better quality product. So you'll have a greater cheese yield, you'll have longer shelf life for your milk products or yogurt products. So overall it's better for the industry. I sometimes have had questions where they'll say, why we don't get paid any more in terms of cents per litre for being, 200 versus, say, 90,000. What's in it for us? But, with every reduction in cell count, it means that your cows have got healthier udders, they're going to be making more milk, and overall, there's always a benefit for being lower.
Yeah. And ultimately that, overall improvement in health is impacting other areas like reproduction and things like that as well, isn't it, Zoe?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So like in terms of clinical mastitis, if a cow's clinically unwell, she might have a bit of a fever, or she might not be eating as much as she'd like. So, if it's at joining time or what have you, there'll be impacts there.
Yeah, perfect. So you mentioned that, you're not only just a vet or, an employee at Dairy Australia, you're also a dairy farmer with your husband, Andrew, over in Western Victoria. Can you tell us a little bit about your farm's milk quality journey and the experiences that you've had on the other side of the award in and around your farm?
Yeah, I can. So I should say it's my husband Andrew and his brother Jamie who run the farm, and we have 4 full-time staff. And I guess where the impact of milk quality, I guess it really brings it home was on our farm, and this was I think maybe I can't remember how long ago. It was a long time. It was about when teat seal came onto the market, and our bulk milk cell count had been getting higher, and it would have had about an average of 300,000. So we're heading out of premium. And Andrew said, all right, can you do a milk quality investigation for our farm? Which I did. And I said, look, we've got lots of clinical cases at calving time. I think we need to add teat seal in addition to antibiotic dry cow at drying off. And this is when teat seal gets come on the market. So people are still learning how to administer it. And, people had, including my husband, had bad experiences of it, still being there at calving. And he said, all right, well, if you want to do that, then you can do the drying off. And I had never dried off a cow in my life because I didn't grow up on a dairy farm, and it wasn't something that dairy vets routinely did. So I went back to work and I asked one of our techs, I said, please, can you teach me how to dry off? And he did. And he's one of the most particular people I've ever met. And so he taught me how to dry off, each teat from start to finish, whatever. So, and then for the next few years, I did, I went up to dry off the cows along with either, some vets or techs from work or, staff from our farm. So after we did after the first year, changing our drying off procedures, our annual average went down to 150. So it halved. And I was just like, oh my God, that's such a buzz. That's amazing. And then the following year we added, internal teat sealants for the heifers prior to calving. And at the time, that was a really big kind of mind shift to put something into a heifer's teat before they'd actually calved. But, the evidence was showing that it did make a difference, and we did have clinical mastitis at calving in our heifers. And, so we did that, and the following season, our annual average was 90,000, which was, again, like, oh my God. And I think the year after that, we got our first silver diamond in the Milk Quality Awards. And since then, we've been in the top 5%, so either a gold or silver diamond. So, we've experienced firsthand kind of what it's like to be recognised for just it's the good routines, consistency in getting the fundamentals right on farm. It's really nice to be rewarded for that.
That's incredible, Zoe.
So since we started, really changing our drying off technique or focusing on it, we've had really good milk quality. Also probably combined with culling decisions around, recurrent clinical mastitis cases. But yeah, it just, the impact, I guess, I think I talked about, farm teams, with pride in their milk quality, like our workers, they're Filipinos. They love getting a diamond. They're very competitive. In the community, they'll all share their results and stuff like that. So it's really is a team effort for maintaining that good milk quality on farm.
Yeah, for sure. And have you seen, as the years have gone on, it has continued to be quite competitive, and they're all sort of, in that team environment, still trying to get the best milk quality possible?
Well, I think it might depend on your background, because I've had so many farmers say to me, we don't do this for the diamond. We do it because we want, good quality milk, and we want healthy cows, and we don't do it for the glory. And then you've got people who are incredibly competitive. So it might be just like the genetics of the person. And yeah, but I think, I think it's just a really, it's not common that people get an award for dairying. People get awards for netball and football and, I don't know, surf boats or whatever. But, an award for being a dairy farmer is few and far between. So that's why I really like the awards.
Yeah, thanks so much, Zoe. And obviously, over the past 12 months, a lot of our dairy regions have been impacted by adverse events, whether that be drought or floods, which, comes with it some increases in challenges around preventing and managing mastitis. Do you have any advice when talking to farmers that are dealing with adverse events such as floods or drought?
Yeah, so it probably depends a little bit on the event. So, for example, for floods, it's the teats are muddy. Everyone thinks wet. There's so much on. I think it's do what you can to reduce the amount of contamination at the teat end. So, for whatever you can do, try and make cows standing, for at least an hour after milking, so that teat canal can close after milking. If you're trying to keep the teats, clean from mud, so that you can get, good teat spray coverage. You might not be able to do every milking, but do one teat of milking. Try and spread the workload to what's manageable. As for drought, I guess one of the things that, has certainly been evident this year in the Milk Quality Awards is that when there's drought, there's no mud, which means there's less mastitis, because we've had lots more farms in the southwest, being in that top 5%. So, you might have less mastitis cases, but what I would say, is when you've got drought, obviously, you're putting money towards feeding stock or sourcing water and what have you. But I'd say don't drop the essentials. So don't try and save on dry cow treatments or teat seal, because, when the drought breaks and, conditions are all wet and muddy, you still need that teat sealant in there to protect those teats, prior to calving. So, Kristen, the other type of natural disaster that you didn't mention, apart from drought and floods, is bushfires. And back in 2018, when we had the St. Pat's fires down in the southwest, one of the things, so it came close to our house, but we weren't in danger. It was just a bit too close for comfort. And the very first thing the processors said after they said, "Are you okay?" is they said, "Can you cool the milk?" And we could, because we have a generator. And I still remember the power was out for a week, and there were lots of farms that were affected because the fire started at a power station. And so there were lots of people who were nowhere near the fire, but they didn't have power for a week, and they couldn't milk because they didn't have a generator. So in terms of milk quality, just having a generator, one, it can help keep your milk cool so you can still get picked up and paid, but it also means you can keep on milking, and you don't need to worry about whether they're going to get milk today or whether you're going to try and milk them at a neighbour's or whatever. That would be, just a must for milk quality.
Yeah, I totally agree, Zoe. And I've had some experiences when I was working in Gippsland, with some of our flood events and people being without power for, numbers of days, if not weeks, and similar situations, not having generators to support them during that time. And yeah, it's definitely a no-brainer to invest in a generator, and there's a number of processes that will support you in providing grants and things to obtain a generator. So you're not having to, go through the logistics of moving stock around or trying to figure out how to milk when you've already got enough stresses on your plate. And similarly, there's a whole range of resources available on the Dairy Australia website too to support people through those adverse events, including some information on generators.
Yeah, and I think, and one of the fact sheets is about cow parking, which, it was written, for cows, that might be going to another farm for a longer period of time. But all of the things in it are really relevant to anyone who's thinking of helping out their neighbour and milking their cows for them while their dairy's underwater or while their fences have been burnt down. And from a milk quality point of view, there are some bugs that cause milk quality issues. So, like there's animal health ones, but things like Streptococcus and mycoplasma can impact milk quality and mastitis. So there are some simple checks on that fact sheet about what to do to protect your milk quality, and what both farms should actually, what kind of questions should both farms be asking, the person who's hosting the cows and the person who's lending the cows, say, some really good questions for them to ask each other to help protect both their herds.
Yeah, because obviously biosecurity plays a really big role into that, and biosecurity is part of your role at Dairy Australia too, Zoe. So can you tell us some more considerations around biosecurity when it comes to mastitis?
So I guess the best thing is to have a closed herd. So to breed all your own replacements and breed all your own replacements, and then you know exactly what bugs you have within, on your farm or within your herd. But obviously there are people who do need to purchase cattle. And so, it's asking good questions about the herd of origin. What is their milk quality history? Have they, do they herd test so that you can know what this cow's infection status is? So, has she got a low cell count or has she been chronically infected, say? And then also, asking for those tests that can test for whether that herd has, had mycoplasma or strep ag in it. So those are the key things I think to look for. And it involves, sometimes I find farmers, people don't like to be rude, and you don't want to say, I want you to tell me the truth. Are your cows healthy? They'll just say, are the cows healthy? And the other person will say, yep, they are, and they won't question it. And I do know of a farm where they just trusted that other farmer, and that other farmer did actually have mycoplasma, and so those cows brought mycoplasma to his herd. Fortunately, the impact wasn't great. They noticed something was wrong. They identified it really quickly, and they put everything into place to minimise spread. You just have to ask questions and ask for proof that the herd of origin is healthy.
Yeah, and is there any sort of, documentation or anything that should be in place around that to support that process, Zoe?
Every farm should have a documented protocol for, what has to happen around purchasing cattle. So, what are the requirements of the herd of origin? How long are you going to quarantine them for once they arrive on farm? Are you actually going to test them for something, double check that they don't have, strep or mycoplasma, strip them for, a week just to make sure they haven't got mastitis or whatever. So protocols around purchasing cattle, but also protocols, there's lots of businesses where they've got multiple farms and they'll move stock between those farms. So, are there any particular protocols that they need to do to reduce, any risk of spread of mastitis or even spread of other diseases? There's quite a few diseases that, if you expose naive animals to infected animals, it can have really significant impact. So, pestivirus is a great example of where you expose naive animals at the wrong stage of pregnancy and you've got a disaster on your hands. So having really clear protocols around movement of stock between properties, and then even just having really good, clear protocols about how you manage clinical cases. So, ideally, they're milked in a separate sick herd after milking, because then you don't have to worry about any contamination on the liners, after they've been milked, and that those liners are going to be cleaned with the dairy wash after milking and they'll be spotless before they, the next cow uses them. So, but, also really clear protocols about how cows are identified, what treatments they need to be given, withhold periods, all that kind of stuff. So this is something that each, farmers should talk about with their vets in terms of what's the most appropriate product, but having really clear protocols about how you identify a cow and how long they're out of the vat, and how do you identify when they're safe to go back into the vat. So, antibiotic residues, they cost farmers money. So you want to minimise them as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. So, Zoe, we're quite fortunate in the dairy industry with, the evolution of technology and different things to support farmers on farm. Where do you see the future of milk quality going? Is there anything cool or exciting that's happening in that milk quality space when it comes to innovation?
That's a great question, Kristen. There's a few different things. Like, I think one of the things we're seeing more of is automatic milking systems. So whether that's, individual boxes, whether it's on a rotary dairy, whether it's batch milking, which is a new thing, kind of a newer thing where it's basically like milking on a rotary or a herringbone, but it's all just done with robots. So you have to have lots of robots. So it's probably a bit more pricey, but it's kind of that same daily routine as traditional dairying. And I think with automatic milking systems, there's so much ability to look at the data. So, you can measure milk volumes, you can measure cell counts, you have a lot better ability to kind of monitor and track milk quality. So I think they'll lend itself to new stuff. So, research, or, there might be some stuff that we find that, oh my God, that's amazing. Then there's also, like, we're seeing more diagnostics. So there's more like, cow-side diagnostics. So where you can identify for cow's mastitis, you can identify whether it's, say, gram-negative mastitis that doesn't need antibiotics, or whether it is a gram-positive bacteria that does need antibiotics, because, obviously we want to try and reduce antibiotic use where we can. So these cow-side diagnostics, I think, have been really, they're on the market already, but I think they'll be, hopefully the prices will come down and everyone will be able to use them whenever they need. I hope, actually, this is probably more a hope than I think, is that we'll have more tests that we can do on bulk milk. So, we can do a test for the diseases that, things like Theileria, which I know irritate, or it's not irritate. That's too mild a word. The farms in Gippsland and New South Wales who have Theileria, like, it can be really devastating and upsetting. If we can have better tests to identify, again, those naive herds versus herds that have it, so that we can kind of minimise any risks of, or mitigate the risks of disease in animals. And then the other thing I think is probably going to happen, there's a focus on is how can we get more value out of the components of milk. So, traditionally milk went to butter and cheese and milk and cream, say, but there's a growing focus on, the special proteins like the lactoferrin and the globulins, the whey proteins, and they're the ones going into your nutritional supplements and things like that. So I suspect that somewhere along the line there'll be a focus on, we've worked out that this particular diet, say, gives you more lactoferrin, so, helping farms kind of try and get more of those special proteins in their cow's milk. So that's got nothing to do with mastitis, but I think it's still part of milk quality, is how can we get the best components in our cow's milk so that our farmers can get paid the most for their milk.
Yeah, I think it's a very cool and innovative space for sure, Zoe. There's a number of resources available from Dairy Australia to support farmers when it comes to milk quality. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what's on offer, Zoe?
Yeah, there's actually lots when you start thinking about it and listing them out. So probably the main one is the Milking Mastitis Management, which is actually a face-to-face workshop that's run out in the regions by our staff out there, and that's for anyone on farm who wants to know more about mastitis. And in the last couple of years, they've changed it up so the second day is on farm, so it's a bit more practical and hands-on-y. And then we have lots of resources. So we have the Countdown Tech Notes, which are kind of like the resources for people who are investigating mastitis problems, so like for your vets and milk processors and things like that. And they kind of then support some farmer guidelines, which is, I guess, kind of like translated the language from less sciencey speak to just language that everyone can understand. And then we've even got some real basic but really clear dairy guides, where it's just like stuff that, any new worker can access right from the start and get the really key information they need to know about clinical mastitis. There's also, there's YouTube videos, a dairy hygiene handbook. Like, there's lots of stuff on the website if people wanted to go and have a look.
Yeah, thanks, Zoe. And I think it's probably worthwhile touching on milking and mastitis management a little bit further. Obviously, that's a fairly new branding of the workshop. It used to be very fondly known of as cups on, cups off. But we went through a redevelopment process a couple of years ago to make it into milking and mastitis management. There's the opportunity for people to complete some of the modules online if they aren't able to get to a face-to-face program straight away. And then alternatively, there is the face-to-face program that's run throughout our regions with our extension officers and quite often accompanied by a vet. But yeah, 2-day program that has a lot of activities, and especially that on-farm day. I've definitely seen it firsthand how important that on-farm day can be to people. We do some sort of, teat preparation stuff around teat cleaning and, teat spraying. And then finally that section on dairy hygiene and, looking through the dairy and seeing how the dairy actually functions, I think is a really nice portion to the workshop now, don't you think, Zoe?
Yeah, definitely. I used to deliver the cups on, cups off, and that was 2 days of people listening to me talk. So I think I tried to make it fun, but I think having people out on farm is definitely the way to go.
Thank you for your time today, Zoe. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And we just wanted to congratulate everyone who has won a Milk Quality Award this year and recognise the dedication and effort from a whole farm team that goes into winning that kind of an award. And our conversation today really has reiterated that good milk quality comes down to the importance of those really good routines, the consistency, and getting the fundamentals right. So thank you very much, Zoe. And for the listeners, check out the episode notes for links to the Dairy Australia 2025 Milk Quality Award winners, as well as related resources and information on milk quality and mastitis management. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kristen.
Thank you for joining today's Dairy Pod episode. We hope you found it enjoyable and insightful. For more information, check out the episode notes. You can stay up to date by following Dairy Pod on your favourite podcast platform. To get in touch, visit dairyaustralia.com.au. Until next time, take care.